been a crazy week, 10 days with so many people passing away. Ozzy and Hulk Hogan and Malcolm Jamal Warner and Lonnie Anderson. Um, Somebody that also passed away is someone that means a lot to us. Gerry Morrow, Champagne Gerry Morrow. Um, it's one of those things. If you know, you know. Anybody from the Calgary territory, and Canada wide and Japan would know Gerry Morrow, especially for us as guys who started in the Calgary territory. One of the all-time great territory workers, um, who probably didn't get his due in a lot of ways. Do you agree with that, Lance?
Oh, absolutely. I think he was the backbone of why a lot of Calgary workers ended up so good. Like he was that heel that worked with so many of the famous baby faces that succeeded and got out of Calgary.
No, that's true. And we've got Lance Storm, Paul Lazenby, and Don Callis, who's agreed to be civil here. Was Gerry kind of a mentor for you, Don?
Yeah, I guess I've been fortunate to have a few, but he was, I guess the first one I had was Brunzell, but Jerry was much more hands-on in the sense that, the first time he saw me wrestle, Brunzell had got me booked in All Japan as a junior, which thank God that didn't happen because I probably would have quit the business after about a day. But Jerry was like, came up to me and said, like, you're not ready to go to Japan. And he was right. It
Mm.
sucked to hear that. And I thought he was a dick. But then he started watching my matches, and then I would often tag with him, sometimes against you and Lance, actually. And he was very blunt with his assessment of your work, of my work. And the first time I ever was in a match with him, I think was me and him against you and Lance. And the finish was Lance. What was the finish? You remember the finish? So
Yes,
you're going to do some bullshit.
I did a splash off the top on Jerry, and you were going to attempt to make the save with your knee drop off the top rope. I was going to move. You were going to knee drop Jerry in the head, and then
Mhm.
I would pick up the cover.
Right. So, in other words, Jerry was going to take a top rope knee drop from me once Lance moved. And I was generally, I think, fairly light with that. But, the added dynamic of having to worry about whether Lance would get out of the way in time, etc. And Jerry just didn't say much. And then as we were going through the curtain, he said, hey. And I said, yes, sir. And he goes, if you hurt me, I fucking kill you. And I was like, well, it was the lightest knee drop I think I ever threw, but that was how he talked, and you had to kind of get used to that. He was very direct and very rough, and went on to he got me the first four international bookings I had were because of Jerry Morrow. So yeah.
How about you, Paul? You started a year after Lance and I, but still, Gerry was very much a part of your early career as well.
Yeah, he had a huge impact on me very early on. I think it was, I want to say my seventh match, and it was my first tag team match ever. It was me and the Human Potato Factory, Randy Rudd, against Gerry Morrow and Cuban Assassin. And so I was really nervous because I had been watching Stampede Wrestling, purely as a fan in Ontario, so I knew who Gerry was. And then while I was training with yourself and with Lance, I was hearing more and more about how respected Gerry was and how good he was, and how important he was to Stampede territory. So by the time I'm in the ring with him, I'm shaking in my boots, and as is supposed to happen, we have referees instructions where the two teams are faced off, and Jerry's going to slap my face, and then we're going to get into it. Well, Jerry's hand is about this big. Like I have a big hand. Jerry's hand is like that big. So when he slapped my face, he got the face, but his ears wrapped around and boxed my ear.
Mm.
And now I'm in the ring with Gerry Morrow and Cuban Assassin, neither of whom really technically speak English. What they speak is close to English, but it's difficult to understand. And I've got this ringing in my ears, so I can't remember spots. I'm this nervous kid. Basically, I just crapped the bed in the entire match. So we get to the back, and I'm expecting to happen what would subsequently happen two or three matches later with Rip Rogers, where I've got the veteran just going up one side of me and down the other and ripping me a new a-hole in front of everybody. But instead, Gerry just pulled me aside. He's like, hey, when this happened, you do this. When this. He was very calm, very matter of fact. laid out a bunch of great information. This is what you need to do to improve. And at the end, he said, look, if you keep trying, you will be good. And he left me on that note. And he didn't have to do that. I was nobody to him.
Mm-hmm.
So I will always really fondly remember Gerry for that.
Yeah, and just for people that don't know, Gerry was a native of Haiti. Is that where he was from? Haiti?
Martinique,
right? Martinique, right? Yeah. Sorry, Martinique. So he spoke French, he spoke Japanese, and English was his third language, I think. Right.
I think English might have been his 10th language based on how he spoke it. But
so
but it's funny how, like, I think all of us, right, guys, like, you pick up on it. Eventually, It's like, because people would go, how do you understand him? I understand him perfectly now, because it's just, you got used to it. He never say the word but. He would go to French. He'd go, I like you, mais, which is French for but. And then he goes, so he'd like mix languages. It was, you had to get used to it, I guess.
Yeah, especially too, because especially back in those days, you would call a lot of your match in the ring. So you had to pick up what Gerry was saying very quickly, because you can't keep what? So you had to really lock into that.
To Paul's thing about the slap and those big hands. In 2001, I brought Gerry into Winnipeg for a promotion I was booking for. And I decided, like, let's just make his lack of English and people not understanding him, let's make that like a thing. And when people like interview him and they don't understand him, he slaps them, right? So I got a guy who I was irritated with. It was a referee named Llama Face. And I said, okay, see, right now I'm not the bad guy in whatever ends up in this story because it's Llama Face. But I said, okay, Llama, you're going to come up and say, like, excuse me, Mr. Morrow, I have your match. And then he'll say whatever he says. He'll say, I don't understand. He's going to give you a little slap. Okay, fine. So boom, boom, boom. So Gerry does it. He slaps him. And Gerry couldn't slap and not have it hurt because of what Paul said is just a big hand. He knocked the shit out of Llama Face. And Llama was like, oh, God. And I went, shit, we didn't get that. Got to do it again. We did it 6 times, to the point that even Lenny was going, okay, I think it's enough now. I would have been there for another few, but yeah.
On that, there is a video on YouTube of a interview doghouse segment with Bob Brown that includes Gerry Morrow and I, where, again, I'm assuming Don had a hand in the booking because I was the one getting slapped. And Gerry slapped me and damn near knocked me backwards over the couch. And it's on YouTube. But to his accent and language and so forth, that's what really I learned how to call a match with Gerry. Because the first loop I did with him in singles matches, I hadn't really gotten used to his accent yet. And I think that's why he just so easily put a match together. He's like, okay, we need 3 spot. And I'm like, excuse me, 3 spot. And we come up with 3 spots. We had a do-si-do spot and a something other spot. And he's like, and then boom, boom, I'll beat the fucking shit out of you. And then when I tell you to, come back. And he'd be like, boom, boom, beat the fucking shit out of me. Fucking drop kick, fucking back drop. I don't give a fuck. And then we did our finish. And I realized how easy it could be.
Yeah.
And we'd wrestle and do stuff, and the crowd need a reaction. He'd be like, do-si-do, and we'd do the do-si-do spot. And we'd wrestle some more, and then he would beat the hell out of me, and then I'd make a comeback, and I'm like, okay. And then once I got used to his accent and he knew I understood him, then he just call it all out there, and it was just like, wow, this is so easy.
Yeah. And it's funny too, like I need 3 spots, which would be a move. Like a spot back then was 1 move. Remember, like 3 false finishes, arm drag, drop kick, and hip toss would be the extent of that. And I remember that too, where and going back to what you guys said earlier, I was going to mention this, like Gerry was, we were all Stampede Wrestling fans. So showing up in Calgary and starting to work on these shows where we were in there with Gerry Morrow and Great Gama and Johnny Smith, that was like being in there with, Randy Savage or something. It was like it was the biggest name guys in Stampede. And here's Gerry doing all these high spots with us. Like you mentioned, what you guys, you dropped the lead on this where Don dropped a knee, but Lance had just done a top rope splash. We're probably working in front of 50 people. And here's Gerry Morrow, who'd been in the game for years and years and years, taking two really big bumps from two really green guys. I wouldn't do that now if some, if some guys
Ron
that
never
young
did that.
I mean, right? So you got to think about Jerry's mindset in working with us, not just as a great heel, but as a veteran who wasn't afraid to work hard and take a lot of big moves and a lot of intricate high spots from all of us.
It's one thing I didn't get until I met him in person. I watched him on Stampede, and I had that fan mindset where physically he didn't look terribly impressive to me because this was the steroid era of wrestling when you get a six pack. And but I still watch his matches. But then when I met him in person, like he's bigger. He's one of those rare people who look bigger in person than on TV. Usually it's the reverse. And you realize this guy, he's handy in the ring if he has to shoot. He's big enough and strong enough to take liberties. And yet he's still going so far out of his way for 7 matches under his belt, Lazenby, and for Lance and for Don and all that. He really did have that sense of intense professionalism where he wanted to grow the next level of talent instead of being threatened by them.
Yeah, and I think he just loved having good matches. And I think that's how we all benefited, in that I remember the first time I ever worked with him. It was Chris and I against Lenny and Jerry in North Battleford, Saskatchewan. Jericho's grabbing his book to confirm.
Damn, dude, how do you remember that?
I knew
what a shitty cheap plug for his book. Haven't you sold enough of those goddamn things already? Well, let me just consult the Encyclopedia of Pro Wrestling, the most trusted name in news, the Jericho book.
Available on Amazon.
Good.
February 21st, 1992, North Battleford, Saskatchewan. Great
and we did 2 out of 3 falls, and it was Jerry. And Len was the other good worker that was more close to our age that could call a match. And we had this match, and I remember afterwards, Jerry was just so excited about how good we all were. And I think he loves having good matches and didn't enjoy working with really bad people that he didn't think would be anything. And he was so excited, and he's taking backdrops left and right. And I went back and looked, and it's like right after that, it's like our next Winnipeg loop. It's like Jericho and I are tagging against him every night with Dawn. And then like my next Winnipeg loop, it's like single matches every night with Jerry. And he just loved having good matches. And to that end too, it's like traveling with him. He was so much fun. And I think it just excited him to be able to be involved in good wrestling again, that we all benefited from it. And I learned so much.
I think to Paul's point about how strong he was, like I remember being in South Africa with him in '94, and myself and I think it was Jason Anderson would go every day to this gym in Durban, South Africa. It was a great gym, had a nice steam room, beautiful gym. First really cool gym, like nice over-the-top gym I'd seen in my life. So we're there every day, so there's nothing else to do. And Jerry would come with us, but he wouldn't lift weights ever or do any cardio. He'd just be in the steam room for like an hour, which I don't even know if that's healthy, but he was doing it. So one day he goes, the steam room is not hot. I'd like to work out. You do bench? I go, yeah, we're about to do bench. So like, I don't know, like Jason Anderson and I had like 225 on the bench, hoping to get 6 reps or some lame shit. But I go, Jerry, you want me to take some weight off? Fuck you. He gets on, he did like 12 reps without warming up. And like, he probably hadn't lifted weights in 20 years. Just a freaky guy, like just strong, real functional strength, right?
You know how important it is to make mental health care more accessible, and that's exactly what Rula is all about. Telehealth has opened new doors, but it can still be tough to find a therapist who takes your insurance, has availability, and is the right fit. Rula's mission is to make high-quality mental health care from licensed professionals easy and affordable for everyone. They accept most insurance plans, and the average copay is only $15 per session. With Rula, you're supported every step of the way. They connect you with a carefully vetted therapist who matches your needs, and they stay with you throughout your journey, helping you schedule, monitoring your progress, and making sure you get the best care possible. Getting started is simple. Rula asks you a few questions about what matters to you, then matches you with licensed in-network providers who fit your preferences. You can book a session as soon as the next day. Thousands have already trusted Rula to support their journey towards improved mental health and well-being. Head over to Rula.com/Jericho to get started today. After you sign up, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show, Talk is Jericho, and tell them we sent you. Go to RULA.com/Jericho and take the first step towards better mental health today. You deserve quality from someone who cares. It's funny too when Lance mentioned how Gerry would tell us to do a comeback or whatever it may be, and he, like you said, he'd say, "Do whatever you want, back, drop kick. I don't give a shit. Do whatever you want." I remember giving him a backdrop and watching it back, and I remember this from Stampede Wrestling as well. Best backdrop taker ever to this day. As a matter of fact, when Gerry passed away, Bret Hart texted me and said he was such a great seller and one of the all-time great heels. And I said that best backdrop ever. And Bret was like, absolutely. Like just a picture perfect backdrop, lost art. Like, I don't even know if guys even give backdrops anymore. And if they do, it's just so someone can land on their feet or whatever. But the art of the backdrop, like Gerry Morrow was the king of that.
Yeah. He loved bumping. Like I was, I don't know if I was just telling someone about it or whether it was somewhere else, but one of those singles tours I did with Gerry in Winnipeg were some pretty thin, nothing happening shows. And I remember he would just do stuff on the fly. It's like he'd bump out of the ring and I'm watching. I was like, what's he doing? And he found this probably a 4-liter, 1-gallon square empty kerosene can, like the steel can. And I'm in the ring and I'm like, what the hell's he going to do with that? I'm like, he's not going to hit me with it. There's 100 people here. And he tucked it in the back of his singlet. And as he gets in the ring, he comes running at me and I hear him quietly, slam, slam. So I scoop him up and I realize I'm going to slam him on this steel can. So I like walk around the ring so everybody can tell he's got this steel can behind him, and I'd slam him on this can and he'd pancake it and roll out selling like crazy. And I'd just be like, he's just having fun.
Yeah. There's it's funny. I saw a match here that was right a few days later in Winnipeg, February 25th, 1992. Lance, Chris, and Gene Kiniski versus Bob Brown, The Natural, and Gerry Morrow. I think that was Gene Kiniski's last match.
He was in the Battle Royal, which I think was after, but it was the night of his last wrestling shows. Yes, that was his last regular match.
Mm-hmm.
And
he was in his 60s. Like, I don't know if it was 64 or 69. I could never get I guess we could Google it, but he was in his 60s. He should not have been in a wrestling ring. He still looked like about next to Bob Brown though.
Yeah.
And Nick Bockwinkel called that match.
Yeah, that was my first commercial TV taping, which blew me away having Nick Bockwinkel call one of my matches. But I'll still remember. I've never felt so ambivalent in my life as being in that locker room, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm sharing a locker room with Gene Kiniski, and I look over and he's doing these hip circles with his baggy underwear on, and like one of his old man balls is hanging out and swinging around in circles on its own. Like, I'm simultaneously thrilled and disgusted. I'm going to lean into the former and forget the latter.
Lance does that. Lance does that in the dressing room now.
I remember it's one of those things too, where he had his tights were off, yes, and the music was playing. Remember, and it was. And I don't think he smoked, but in my mind's eye, he had a cigarette as well. And it was one of those things where it's like, our music's playing, Gene. He's like, oh, music. Okay, well, took a drag, put the cigarette out, pulled up his pants, and went to the ring.
You're missing the best. We were standing there, and I realized it was music. I'm like, our music's playing, Gene. He looks at me. He's like, do I have time to put on my trunks? And I'm thinking, no, but do it anyway.
And we're such young green. We're like, come on, we gotta go. The music's been playing for 30 seconds. And he's just like, we'll be right there, kid. Let's talk about Gerry as a guy, as a personality. I mentioned traveling together. I remember traveling to Winnipeg a couple times with him. One time you had a big black eye, Lance. You remember that?
Yes. And again, this was also too where Gerry always backed the boys. That it was a tag match in Winnipeg, not Winnipeg, but the Winnipeg Loop. I think it was actually in, doesn't matter, like Dauphin or some crazy place. And we were,
Well,
he's looking it up.
Oh.
It's because it was
Oh,
the
my-
last loop in the Winnipeg tour before we went to the Saskatchewan show.
okay, well, you keep talking and I'll look it up.
And we used to do the London Bridge spot where I'd like have the headlock on Gerry and Don would feed in. I'd jump up and hook him with my legs. And then Chris is going to run in, drop kick me, and I do the headlock takeover with the head scissor. And I remember Chris saying, it's like, make sure you always set up the right way. So I don't know which side to drop kick you. So just set it up so I come in straight. And we're like, okay, well, this time we didn't set it up straight. And Chris went to the side that he usually did, but was the wrong side because we had set it up differently. So when I go to take him down, I realize it's like going the wrong way with Gerry. I'm going to drive his head right into the floor. So I let go of his head early so he could bump. But when he bumped, his foot came around and kicked me right in the eyeball, heel of his boot. And I've actually got a photo because we had to go to Saskatchewan for the next show. And I iced my eye right afterwards. It was bleeding and there's a little bit of a cut, but not bad. And then we stopped at the Circle K in Brandon, Manitoba to get drinks and some food. And I went into the bathroom and I blew my nose, which you should not do after getting hit in the face. Paul's making the face because he knows what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And my eyes swole right shut. So I come out of the bathroom, everybody's looking at me and go, what the hell? It's like my eyes completely shut closed. I've got a photo of it standing in front of the Circle K sign. And I was supposed to work Gerry on the Bob Puppet show somewhere in Saskatchewan, Melford, Saskatchewan or someplace. And I get there and I'm like, I really can't work. But Gerry is like, no, you get paid, you work. And we did a 2-second match where I go to the ring. I'm supposed to wrestle Gerry and I take my sunglasses off and go, I can't wrestle, my eyes closed. Everybody looks like, oh, holy shit. And Gerry, of course, jumps me in the safest beating I've ever taken in my life. One quick spot, I roll Gerry up, 1, 2, 3. I get the win, the crowd pops, and Gerry stood over Bob to make sure I still got paid for the show.
Wow.
Because he was not going to have me miss a payday. And I think Gerry sort of felt guilty because he kicked me in the face, but it's like it had nothing to do with Gerry. We were just in a clustered spot that went wrong.
Dude, your memory is crazy because there is a Dauphin, Manitoba in here, and there is a Melfort, Saskatchewan in here. And the matches every night were Lance versus Gerry and the Natural and Storm Pin Morrow every night. I never got one fucking pin. Dauphin, Killarney, Melta, Beausejour, Steinbach,
Melita.
and Winnipeg. Melita.
I'm
And of
assuming
course,
Bob,
so I didn't do any jobs.
No. And
Oh.
I didn't beat anybody and you didn't lose. So
I think Bob was booking
I was
then.
I was keeping you strong.
Bob didn't like Chris because Chris would stand up for himself more.
yeah,
So he would tend to give me the wins.
Bob Brown, yeah. And I remember too, maybe it was this tour, Gerry was riding with us because I remember my dad had a Cadillac and I think I had the car to drive us around and Gerry was so impressed with, oh, the Cadillac. Your dad's got the Cadillac. And he was so excited to be in the Cadillac. And we even roomed together. I actually told Bret this story as well, where we were rooming together and I don't think that we were sleeping in the same bed, but it wouldn't surprise me if we were, because I think there was 4 of us in a room with 2 beds, and that's just how you fucking did things back then. But either way, Gerry was in the room and he said, hey, Chris, the lights are out now. We're trying to go to bed. Hey, Chris, tonight you fart like this. Tomorrow morning you fart like this. And then he's like, good night. And I was like, I think he's joking, but I still slept with my ass towards the wall.
You guys mentioned Melfort. I don't know if it's the same show. This was a Bob Puppets show, but again, this blew me away because I didn't know Gerry nearly as well as you guys did. We just crossed paths once in a while and we knew who each other were. But I worked Lenny Luther on the Melfort show, and there was supposed to be a battle royal at the end. And purely because Lenny was leading me by the hand through that match, it got over big, and he got me over as a babyface to that crowd where they were responding really well. And I got in the back, and Gerry walks over to Bob Puppets, and Brad Young was supposed to be the winner of the Battle Royal. And he said, no, he's got to win tonight. He's got to win. He had watched the match. He had read the crowd just out of pure professionalism. And it wasn't because I was great. It was just because tonight that's the right finish for the battle royal. That's what needs to happen.
That's a great call. That's a great call. Don, you mentioned being in South Africa with Gerry. Did you tour quite a bit with him in those types of places?
Yeah, Jerry introduced me to Gama, which got all my international bookings early. So I was in South Africa with Jerry. A month later, I was in Europe with Jerry. I was supposed to be in Lebanon with Jerry, but he was smart enough to powder on that one. I was dumb enough to
because
go.
I was in Lebanon with him the year before he learned.
Yeah, so I think, unlike me, Jerry still somehow got paid for that tour, even though he never went on it. I went on it and didn't get paid. But yeah, so he was always game for, whatever. Like he loved to be in the ring. He loved to wrestle. And I mean, I don't know if he would have gone anywhere, but probably he would have. I mean, that was his mindset back then.
Do you remember anything from Lebanon, Lance, when you were there with him?
I remember we got stiffed greatly on our pay. And I remember because Don wasn't there, so I played crib with Jerry. But it was again, Jerry and Gama were on the tour, which was why I went, because I figured, okay, they're smarter than me. This can't be as dangerous as I think it is, because they're willing to go. But the crazy thing is, because we got stiffed under pay, so be it. But when we landed in Lebanon, they took all our passports, ushered us out a side door, and we never actually cleared customs. And we're in like Jeeps getting driven to our hotel. Like, what the hell's going on? So we get to Tyre, Lebanon, and they're like, hey, let's go for a walk. I'm like, okay. Jerry's going, Mondo Guerrero's going, Chavo Guerrero Senior's going. So we're walking around, and I'm thinking, it's like, I don't have my passport. I'm in a foreign country. Yeah. I don't know if I'm here legally. What the hell's going on? And I remember we're walking, and then we turn a corner, and there's like a military checkpoint, and we all like stop. And we're like, what? And Jerry's like, keep going. Because it's like, if we turn around, they're going to know something's up. So we're walking. And then these Lebanese military guys start being all animated and stuff. And I'm like crapping my pants. And Jerry just sort of keeps pushing me to move forward. And we get there finally. We realize that all the animation, they're pantomiming wrestling moves. They know why we're there, and they're all excited. And all the world-class television was huge in the Middle East.
Right.
All the Lebanese guys thought Jerry was Iceman King Parsons. And they were like all excited to see him. So they were like, hey, and everything. Oh, and we get past them. I'm just like, I'm never doing this again. I'm scared to death. And Jerry's laughing at me. But yeah, that was quite the tour. We did a week in Tyre and a week in Beirut. And if it wasn't for Jerry and Gamba, I would never have had the balls to even go.
It's interesting. I remember, this is coming back to me as we're talking, back in those days, pre-internet, when you were trying to get booked, you would have to literally send a tape and pictures to the different territories. And Jerry gave me a list of places to send tapes to. And then these are like, I remember one was Steve Rickard in New Zealand. And I've looked back on it now, and Steve Rickard stopped running shows like in 1981, and this is like 1992, but still he had the address and he passed it along. So I remember sending to all these various places because Jerry had given me these addresses. And once again, just, and I don't know how old Jerry was. How old was he when he passed away, Don? Do you have any idea? Do you guys know?
I want to say like about 75. I just saw him, by the way, in May, and other than the gray hair, you wouldn't have known just looking at him immediately like how sick he was, because of course Jerry is legendary for his toughness and no selling, and so I was glad I got to see him in May, and I think he was about 75, and I think the last year had not been great in terms of how the disease had progressed. So
right. So we're looking, he was 75. He was born in 1949. So he's already 40 years old, 40 odd years old when we show up, Lance, to start working. And he, once again, did not have to help these young guys, but he fit right into this. Like, I wouldn't have thought he was 40. He acted like he was fucking 18. Like another one of his great lines is, hey Blo, give me pill. You got pill? Because he was French, so much like Pat Patterson, the S's were lost in the translation. So it wasn't pills. It was just, give me pill, bro. You got pill? It's like, no, I don't got any pills.
And if you didn't have one, he would threaten to go tell news that you called him a racial slur.
The N-word. That's right.
Yeah.
Give me pill, or I'll tell news that you called me the N-word.
And the funny thing is he would, like, when news would be walking towards us, like out of earshot, Jerry would lean into those racial things. Look at this fucking blah, blah, blah. Kick his ass. Oh, yeah, he thinks he's a shooter. And then as soon as News would step into, like, ear range, he'd go, hello, Mr. News. How are you?
He's like Eddie Haskell, just like, doing it just for the joke, right? Yeah.
The other thing that I remember having, I don't think you were on this loop, Chris. I remember it was a Winnipeg trip. You were probably in Mexico by then. And we had this tiny little 2-door hatchback thing, and there's like 4 of us in it. But traveling with Jerry and his love for music and his willingness to sing said music, I remember doing this loop, and it was around the time that the Batman soundtrack by Prince was big. And riding at like 3 a.m, driving, at night, and, Prince's Scandalous comes on, and Jerry singing at the top of his lungs, or if again, Pump Up the Jam and some of the other songs that he used to love will be on, he's dancing as he drives. And it's just like, God, he's so much fun.
Whenever I hear the song, I still think of Jerry. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. He would always just start singing that, Yeah.
He would substitute in something for Move once in a while as well when he would sing that.
Don, when you were booking in Winnipeg, which was quite early on in our careers, probably since '94 is when you basically started or whatever. You brought in a lot of guys, and you brought in Jerry quite a bit. How did you book him, and how did you use him as a talent?
I guess, well, I'd known him because Tony brought him in, and actually I was Canadian champion at the time, and then they, talk about small time stuff that at the time seemed like big time stuff. I'm wrestling Paul's good friend Gene Swan, and so Bob Brown's the book. He goes, just go out there and you're gonna punch the referee, and then we'll do the rest. And I'm like, okay, it's a DQ. But what it was they DQ'd and stripped the belt off me so they could put it on Gerry Morrow. And I'm like, why did you have to like Montreal screw job me for this shitty belt? I'm getting paid $40. Like, I'm not going to say like, I won't put Jerry over. So it was just like a weird deal. So he came in, had the belt, and then I think they programmed him with Chi Cruz or something. It was really good matches. And then I just kind of, because I had this relationship with him, from him A, mentoring me, and B, booking me, when I had any ability to bring anyone in, I would always bring in Jerry and Gama. And, they taught guys, and they were good for business, and they're both just great guys to have around, and Jerry, you never had to worry about Jerry having a bad match, just put him out there with anyone, as Lance, it's just like he could work with anybody. And so guys like that, of course, are pretty darn valuable. And he was very tough. And I think that because he was always around News, it was like, well, News is News, right? But Jerry was probably one of the tougher guys in the business at one point. And I remember we did a TV taping here in 2001, and I lost my cell phone, one of those little flip phone thingies from kind of like late 90s, early 2000s. And I called it. And it was a guy who goes, yeah, I got your phone. I'm in a bar. And he was in Chris, you'll remember, the St. Charles Hotel, which is down on Albert Street, and like not a place you want to go at night. Certainly not a place you want to go if you've, got long hair or suntan and can't fight your way out of a paper bag. So what did I do? I asked Jerry to go with me. You go, where are we going? I go, going to a bar to get my phone. I kill this guy. I go, well, maybe you don't have to. So I walked into the bar with Gerry Morrow, and like, there's some bad dudes in there, but I was not afraid whatsoever. So Jerry had an aura, right? So
how big was Jerry in Japan? Because I know he had a Japanese nickname, like it was something like White Lightning or something, but in Japanese they called him like, Hazumeaki or whatever it was. Was he quite popular there? What was his career like in Japan? Any ideas?
Not a clue, to be honest. I know he worked there, but that's the extent of my
I know
knowledge.
Right.
he was actually trained there, right? I mean,
Really? Okay.
he trained in Japan, the old IWA Japan promotion that was the precursor to, I think, All Japan and New Japan. Um, he went there through his brother, I believe, and he trained there. And I think he lived in Japan for a few years, and that was how he picked up the language. And if you looked at the way he worked, um, it was what I would call a very safe Japanese style. Was kind
Mhm.
of like a lot of how he worked with different things thrown in. But yeah, he was. I don't know. I don't think he was ever a huge star there, but
Mhm.
I think he was there. What he was everywhere. He was the Swiss Army knife. He was the guy who was a glue guy in the locker room, and he was a guy who could have a great match with a good worker, and he could have a good match with a shitty worker, like he did with Lance many times. You know,
Yes, where he would constantly tell me to hit him harder. Because I worked
everyone told you that, Lance.
except you.
No,
How did he end up in Calgary and then living there? Was he married, Don?
how he ends up in Calgary. That's a mystery. I'm not sure
Mm.
how that happened. I mean, I know he's probably lived there 40 years, right? So
Yeah.
going back in the day. So yeah, I don't know.
Why do you guys think he never made it to a bigger spot? Because once again, like I said, he's kind of the ultimate territory guy, but never made it to the next level.
It's probably partially like if you look at the 80s and like okay, why didn't Vince take him and Cuban Assassin? They would have been a great like Killer Bees level mid card tag team, put other people over. I think probably a couple of things. I think first of all, the promo stuff was important back then, and he was hard to understand. And the other thing is that he wasn't all gassed up. He wasn't a big muscular guy, which a lot of guys were back then, right? Was he better than a lot of the guys in WWF at the time? Absolutely. But I always say he's the best wrestler who never got a break that I've ever seen. Like
Mm.
he should have got a break. He would have been great in WWF with a gimmick, but I think that was the issue. It's like, well, what do we do with this guy? He's not big. He doesn't speak great English. It's tough. They wanted muscular guys.
Well, I think also too, it's a bit of a timing issue in that, like you said, he was 40 in 1990.
Yeah.
That
Mm-hmm.
by the time there was anything more than just which territory are you working in, when it was, oh, get a big break with WWF and a national company, he was getting on the older side. That I could see where, they're looking for gassed up guys and younger guys. That, people of his age and older were predominantly just successful territory guys. And if you got into a territory with a lifestyle and people you liked, I think a lot of people just stayed
Mhm.
put.
What do you think, Paul?
I can't disagree with either one of those two things. I would say the age is probably the primary factor because Don's points all absolutely hold water, but at the same time, you would think that they might find a place for him, as Don said, in the interest of getting other guys over. But it's just, we're talking about the late 80s, early 90s. There's guys working 300 matches a year sometimes. Can you put this guy on the road and expect his body to hold up when he's already closing in on 50 years old in the early 90s? It might have been just his age might have been the only factor, to be honest.
Isn't it weird, guys, that like back then, like, so first of all, 40 was considered old. Now 40, you're in your prime, right?
Right.
Also, we all at various times to each other and probably outside of that group made fun of Bob Brown for being 50 years old and still in the business. And here we all are. So it's just so funny how that worked. It's like if someone had told me, yeah, well, when you're 57, you'll still be in the business, I'd be like, no, I'll never be like Bob Brown,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
it's just this is the thing that I think that like guys like Jerry, it's almost like your parents, right? When you're a kid, you're like, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. And then you realize your parents were right. I feel like with guys like Jerry and even guys like Bob, it's like at the time we're all like young wild horses. We want to run. We don't want to be told slow down. But a lot of that advice that Jerry and even Bob and other guys like that gave us, it's right.
Yeah.
Like Chris, you and I talk about like, oh, as Bob Brown once said, like
Yeah.
what?
Oh, yeah,
but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
true.
No, you learned a lot from all those guys. And I think another thing to kind of add on to that, and what Lance said was, territories were just were the lifeblood of the business back then. And sure, Vince went national in '84, and maybe Jerry could have went to WCW. Maybe he didn't want to. Let's say, why didn't Jerry go to world class? Well, maybe Stu was paying him a decent amount of money, and he likes Calgary and he likes the territory, and they're always using him in great spots, like you mentioned with Cuban Assassin, or I remember the ridiculous. He might have joined Karachi Vice at some
Oh, he
point,
did. He had the turban.
which was great because Karachi Vice was Great Gama, and then he had Vulcan Singh, who was Gary Albright, and Muckin
Mock and
Singh.
sing.
And there
Yeah.
was, these Canadian guys, American guys that were not Indian in any way, shape, or form. Now they're heels because they're wearing turbans, and the crowd is chanting Packies at them because that's just the way it was in the '80s. But Jerry's right in the mix of it with a turban on, the black, Indian guy, and maybe he just liked all that and didn't want to move anywhere else.
We've talked before about how Jerry loved having great matches. He was probably thinking, if I go to world class, if he gets enough from WWF or WCW, he's not going to have the leverage to develop the young talent. He's not going to be able to call the shots like he would be able to do in Calgary or in an independent promotion where he's the big fish in a small pond that can take more control and bring the young guys up and teach them. Where that might, he might have been thinking, that's not going to be available to me to do. I'm just going to be punching the clock in a bigger company.
I think Chris, he was also, I agree with what Paul just said, but I think Jerry was one of those guys that really the territory system was ideal for him. Like if you think about the perfect thing for Jerry was probably exactly what he had. He's a star in Stampede Wrestling. He goes to New Japan a couple times a year, gets his Japan fix, goes to Puerto Rico the odd time. In the summer, he'd go to the Maritimes to work for Emile Dupree.
Yeah.
I think he loved that day in, day out, get in the car with the boys, go on the road, to Paul's point, have the kind of matches he wanted. I mean, might have made close to the same as he would have as an underneath guy in WWF at the time. There were no guaranteed contracts back then. So I think Jerry kind of, without maybe doing it consciously, I don't know, but he carved out a pretty awesome niche for himself, I think.
It's one thing that I'm also very grateful for, in that the fact that Jerry was a Calgary guy and I'm still in Calgary, and I posted this where, threads, wherever it was, where I'm so grateful that, like, I saw him every couple of years. He'd come to the local show, and it's like, he's one of the few people who meant a lot to me, both personally and my career, that I got to tell him that.
Yeah.
And I got to say thank you to him many times. And I think it was before we started recording, but Chris mentioned that I had written a tribute commentary about Jerry in 2000. And it was actually inspired by someone passing, or everyone passing. God, it was, a time where there was so many deaths in the business. And I thought to myself, it's a shame that we have to get together after they're gone to tell people how much they mean to us. So I started writing these tributes to the people who meant a lot to me while they were still alive. And I remember running into Jerry not long after I wrote that post. And he thanked me for it, that he saw it. It meant a lot that I put over how much he meant to me and others that were through Calgary. And then again, going to a local PWA show and Jerry and Gama show up and I get to thank him again. And when I posted that I was so glad that he knew how much he meant to me and all of us, really, I would go back in my phone. And again, I'm not a huge picture guy. I probably have like 2 photos with Paul, maybe. And Don, I delete them if he happens to take them. But it's like, I found like 5 or 6 from like the last few years where it's like, oh, Jerry came to a show and I got a photo with him. Oh, Jerry came to a show. And it was a year ago, little over a year ago, there was a Dynamite in Calgary, and we've got that photo of Len, Don, me, Chris, and Jerry. And we all told him numerous times during that day how grateful we were for having him as a friend and a mentor over the years. And I think it meant a lot to him. And it was so nice to be tell people while they're still around how much they meant to you. And I did that so many times with Jerry because he was a Calgary guy.
Thing too, and you're so right about that, Lance, is that Jerry always came to the shows, which it was always, and it was always really great to see him. Like, you see some guys, how's it going, man? But Jerry, I think for that Calgary show last year, I remember I worked with Samoa Joe and we had some kind of a big stunt that we had to do or whatever. So it took a long time. And oh yeah, I put him through a wall on a forklift. And Jerry showed up and I think he just came and you guys just sat in my dressing room for like an hour or whatever it was. And I had to go out and come back in, but it's like, that's Jerry. He didn't just come just to say like, hey, or it's uncomfortable or whatever. He just come to hang out and you're more than happy to have him do so, And like you mentioned, Lance, we did have a chance to say thanks to him many, many times, but he made himself available to do that. A lot of guys don't. Don, as we start to wind down, you spent some time with Jerry. He's been sick for a while, on and off. Was it stomach cancer that he had, or many types of cancer?
I think it started off with bladder cancer, and then I believe it had kind of spread everywhere. And they had said, well, you can do chemo or whatever. It's the typical, like you can do chemo and you may last 2 years. Your life is going to be shit though, because it's going to suck. Or you can just take whatever meds they give you and you'll live a better life, but you only have 6 months, or the typical kind of thing. I don't know what they specifically told him, but I know that I wasn't surprised that Jerry chose the non-chemo option, kind of like screw this type of thing. And so I had seen him last year when AEW was in Edmonton. Him and Gama's son had driven up to the show and had Jerry backstage, and that was great, and got to kind of talk to him and share, because before he was sick, I certainly would do what we're all talking about whenever I would see him and thank him. And then so that was last year. And then again, this May, I was in Edmonton. I drove down to Calgary just to see him. And, he was the same. Jerry was laughing and joking. I was wearing a New Japan track jacket because I like free clothing, so as Paul knows, he used to get me free Roots of Fight stuff. So I'll wear anything for free. So Jerry's like, oh, that's a nice jacket. So I gave him the jacket.
Oh,
he
that's
was
cool.
like so happy. And the cool thing was in 1990 or 91 rather, Gerry Morrow gave me an All Japan tracksuit. And it was one of those like light blue ones with a big like 1970s collar, and they were flared pants and they were like baby blue. And I think I still have the jacket somewhere. So it's kind of like a cool for me, like, hey, remember when you gave me this 30 years ago? Well,
yeah,
here you go. So, yeah, so it's all, listen, it's always the same thing with these deals, right? I mean, it's like, it's hard for us because we miss him. It's way better for him not to be suffering.
I think, and kind of what you guys were just saying too, like some people pass away. Like it was like I mentioned, it's been a hard week with some of these deaths. But with Jerry, like I feel okay with it because we had a lot of time to say thanks and it was like you called me, Don, when you were in Calgary, but I was at the AC/DC concert, and it's like if I answer this phone, it's just gonna be like, Jerry, hey. I probably should have just to say hey, but I thought it'd be kind of rude to answer the phone and talk to him at the AC/DC, but I felt okay. Like we know how we feel about each other, and we had a chance to say that a few times. So this passing, like you mentioned, Don, as long as he's not in suffering and not hurt, I'm not as heartbroken as I am sometimes when our friends just kind of leave so fast. Do you feel that, Lance, the same way?
Yeah, and the fact that he did live a pretty good long life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was like 75. It wasn't a, because there's times where, you hear someone that you knew real well pass and it's like they're younger than you are. And it's really jarring. And this wasn't a shock. Like I knew he was ill. So it's like, I knew it was coming at some point. But again, the fact that most of us or all of us and many people got to tell him how much he meant and the fact that he knew that and appreciated that, there's a comfort to that.
Right.
knowing that you didn't have something go unsaid.
It's somebody, a close friend of mine who's not with us anymore said once, the most important thing in the business is having the respect of your peers. It's great to have fans like you, and it's great to make money, and it's great to have great matches. But when you have the respect of your peers, that's something that you can't buy. And I think Gerry would be and was pretty happy about that. Like I said, like when Bret Hart, who a lot of us hold as the kind of watermark of a great wrestler, texted me and said Gerry Morrow was a great wrestler. I think Gerry would be pretty happy about that. Do you feel that, Paul?
Yeah, definitely. And on top of that, I think what you said is tremendously important, having the respect of the peers. But one thing that always struck me about Gerry was he had that in immense quantity. I didn't talk to anybody that didn't respect him as a worker, but also myself included. And I had a much more distant relationship with him than you guys did. But anybody who knew Gerry, when you started talking about Gerry, they'd smile and they'd have a story that made them laugh and made you laugh. As like, that is one hell of a legacy to leave behind, not just being one of the, an elite level worker who's respected across pro wrestling, but people feel good when they think of you. And that's what Gerry's leaving behind. And I think that's a successful life.
Yeah. Last thing, you guys got any final memories or stories of Gerry? I can throw one out there. This was early on in our career. When CNWA started, it was in Frank Sisson's bowling alley where Lance and I trained, and Paul. And then they started doing TV tapings there. And there was a couple pipe and drape kind of dress rooms. And then I think there was a couple rooms. Lance probably remembers the exact architecture of the place. But anyways, there was a referee called David Putnam, who was Bulldog Brown's son. And Beef Wellington one night fucking beat the shit out of David Putnam in the dressing room where Johnny Smith and Gerry were in. And I had just come in. So I didn't see the fight, but I came in after whatever the hell happened. And Bob Brown was furious. He was our boss. He was the booker. And he came in and he said, "What happened? My boy just got beat up by Biff Wellington. He's got a black eye. What happened, Johnny?" And Johnny said, "I didn't see anything, Bob. I had my glasses off." And he goes, "All right, well, what happened, Gerry?" And Jerry's like, "Oh, Bob, I was sleeping." And he said, "You were sleeping in the middle of the fight?" He said, "Bob, I like my nap. I had a good nap." So Johnny couldn't see anything, and Gerry was sleeping.
I remember,
quote unquote, of course, they saw the whole fucking thing, but they're just standing up for the boys.
So back to Bob Brown. So on that same loop where me and Gerry wrestled you and Lance, Chris, after the match, Bob Brown says to me, "Oh, Jesus Christ. That Gerry Morrow, he's a big ripper." And I went, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "I soaked my underwear in beer." Now, I'm pretty sure it wasn't beer. It's probably Jerry's urine. But so I was like, "Oh, wow." And I'm just thinking, this is a great rib. Someone finally got Bob, So I go to Gerry, I go, "Hey, man, that was fucking awesome." He goes, "What you talking about?" I said, "Bob just told me you soaked his underwear in beer." He goes, "That motherfucker." He goes to Bob and he threatens Bob, "Don't you talk shit about me. I don't do nothing. You stooge me, I slap you." And Bob is shitting himself. But the thing is, Gerry totally did it. But then it's like he doubled down and threatened to kill this guy. That was Gerry.
Oh, it's so good.
My favorite Gerry story, and it was a loop in Winnipeg. We're working every night, and this is when he's just calling it in the ring. And we would always, as a general rule, come back to the arm. It was sort of we'll work the arm tonight. I'm like, okay. And the whole tour. And then one night, right before he goes out, he's like, "Tonight we work the head." And he sort of has a weird look on his face and he goes to the ring. I'm like, okay. So we do our spots. I grab the headlock, take him over. And he starts chewing on my nipple as I'm on and I'm like trying not to sell it. And I'm like, "Ow, Gerry, smarten up." Ow. And we do another spot and I take him down. He'd do it again. I'm like, "That son of a bitch." The next night, he's like, "We're back to the arm." I'm like, "Thank God." That really hurt. Last night of the tour, right before we go to the curtain, he looks at me and he laughs and he's like, "Tonight, the head." And he goes to the ring. I run to my bag and I've got a tube of A535 heat rub and I just like coat my chest with as much of as I can. So we do our first spot. I grab the headlock and take him down. He reaches up and starts chewing on my nipple, and then he starts gagging and spitting. He's like, "You got me, you got me," and I'm laughing. And we're trying not to let the crowd know that we're both laughing our asses off in the ring. It was so much fun. God, I love the guy.
You got anything, Paul?
I'm gonna, because Luther's not here. He's got one of my favorite Jerry stories of all time from the infamous Northern Manitoba Death Tour. And I love this. Luther said that Lenny said that Jerry helped him to kill a good 3 hours of one of the trips, because as you guys have been on it, remember, it's like you're on those northern winter roads. You're doing about 5 miles an hour. You're going up and down as much as you're going laterally. It's a really, really rough road. So everybody's getting jostled around inside the van. And he said Jerry was completely asleep, but his head was whipping violently back and forth with the van and coming within a hair's breadth of the window. And Lenny's fascinated by how fast he's going toward the window, but not hitting it. He's like, Jerry's head worked the crowd like Dusty Rhodes getting out of a sleeper hole for like an hour and a half. And then it finally went, wham. I was like, okay, now I go to sleep.
Yeah, Lenny sent in a message of a couple of good stories. I guess one time Jerry flipped out and ripped up his wrestling license because he was mad at something, and then realized that, oh, fuck, I won't be able to go fishing because it was my fishing license that I ripped up instead. But guys, thank you for doing this. And like we said, Gerry Morrow, one of the all-time greats in our careers and in the business. And we're going to miss him, but God bless him for sure.
All right, be Jerry.
Thank you, guys.